Bretto, can you believe it? The Wellness Summit is almost here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, Bretto, it's been 2 long years since our last Wellness Summit, and if you're listening to this, folks, and don't have a ticket, then
What are you doing?
the Wellness Couch family of podcasters gather for 2 days in Melbourne on Saturday, August 25 and 26, featuring
The Queen of Nutrition, Cindy O'Meara.
the rock star of wellness, Dr. Damien Christoph,
Connect with your spirit and soul with Bali Bomb survivor Karen Smith.
self-care is on the menu with Kim Morrison.
Master the art of aging well with the one and only Marcus Pearce.
Oh, shucks, Bretto. What about how to recover from rock bottom with Dr. Brett Hill?
Master your stress with Dr. Maria Zuschman.
Get empowered with Imogen Bailey.
Female health experts Dr. Andrea Huddleston and Ashley Bond.
Master your sleep with Audra Starkey.
The natural nutritionist Steph Lowe. Australian Idol winner Wes Carr.
Woohoo! And Quirky Cooking's Joe Witten and Fuad Kassab and a whole lot more.
Oh, what a lineup, MP. Seriously, why would you not be coming to the Wellness Summit?
Not to mention our world-class exhibition of Australia's most incredible sustainable wellness products and services.
MP, we've done the final layout. There are less than 100 spaces left.
And there's only a few discounted tickets available at thewellnesssummit.com.
Marcus, be there or be square. Zazen Alkaline Water presents the 2018 Wellness Summit, Saturday, August 25 and 26 at the Collingwood Town Hall.
Get in quick, folks. The final release of discounted tickets available at thewellnesssummit.com. See you there, Bretto.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is When Siblings Attack Each Other, which is a super juicy topic and we're excited to dive into it. But before we do, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe. Once a week, we'll send you an email with everything we've put out in the world and occasionally something a little bit saucier or juicier that we should share just intimately or with intimate friends. So nourishingthemother.com.au just to stay in touch via email.
So this is a new found area for me because up until probably in the last 6 months have I really started to see sibling anger play out. Like that real, like they want to rip each other's heads off type stuff.
When it's that phase, I think you really notice it. It's kind of like so I've got 1,000 thoughts happening in my head. I'm not articulating a single one of them. Just assume you're all in my head with me. Let's slow that down. It's just it really, I think it's easy to be like the hypothetical parent, isn't it? Is when you've got a young baby, or toddler, and they're just so sweet and, go about their business and, you can be thinking, well, I don't know. No, he just loves her so much. No, she's just such a little mum, so kind and just. I'm like, yeah, right. And the bigger the infatuation, the bigger the downfall.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, so tell us where you're at.
So I'm noticing my son's 5, and I've ever since him turning 5 and starting school, there's more of that boisterousness, that big needing to constantly move, and he'll run around the house sometimes roaring, and he's got a fierceness now, and a lot of the time it's not directed at his sister, but sometimes it is, and that's like a real moment for me to check in and go, whoa, this is big. I can see what can play out here in this dynamic. And it takes me right back to my own childhood when my brother and I had a game called Punch and Kick and Fight, which I used to judge. And in fact, in past podcast episodes, we've talked about this, and I've been really judgy about it. And the more that I've been learning about neurobiology and then this family dynamic situation, the more I'm like, actually, that was a genius creation of us to express the energy of the family that needed to get out. But, as parents, when we're facing our children wanting to rip each other's heads off or, not, in inverted commas, use their words, but instead use their bodies, it can be really emotionally charged for us to be with and witness and find a way through without completely trying to pull them off each other and shut it down, essentially. Because I think that we have a responsibility to do what we can so that no one really gets hurt, but at the same time, it's a relationship dynamic that they have that we are projecting onto it with our lens view of things, that's often not always accurate. And so if we intervene too much, I think we then rob them of the opportunity to work it out on their own and to practice skills of communication with each other. And so I think I'm really sort of percolating a whole range of different ideas around what I think about how best to equip them both with what I see as wonderful skills that they can learn from these encounters with each other. But oh God, it's still so emotionally fraught, I think, particularly with, Sylvie still just being littler, like she's just turned 2 and, she's much smaller than he is. And so there is that desire to make sure he recognizes that his size compared to her and, to try to level this playing field. However, the nature of family dynamics is such that, if he has this, whether conscious or not, need to make sure that she doesn't infatuate with him. And so if he feels that she's got him up on some kind of pedestal, he's going to break that, and that might mean he's really mean to her so that she backs off and goes and finds her own way without needing to be all around him. So I also see there's the function in it. But I guess I'm more new to witnessing these dynamics, and so I'm really interested to flesh it out with you, Jules, on your many more years of, seeing how these play out and also what you find on the other side of, as they become older and more articulate about the relationship that they've got, how they relate in a way that's empowered with each other and allows each person to feel heard, but also the energy and the emotion expressed, not shut down.
Yeah. I really get it. And look, I don't think that I have all of the answers to this at all. So I hope you're not after answers. But I'm happy to hash out a philosophy. And it's funny actually, because you and I had this conversation the other day, and then I'm in Reno mode right now, and I had this tradie walk in, and he's one of 4 brothers. Like there's no coincidences.
We
in this world,
seriously
right?
had talked about it like half an hour before.
Seriously, right? And so this beautiful, I was about to say young man, makes me feel old. Something in his 30s man walked in, and he was just lovely, and we'd already talked about the Reno stuff I want, and somehow we ended up, I don't know how it happens, we ended up having this conversation about him and his children, which led on to him being one of 4. Maybe that's how it came about, and one of 4 brothers. And so I was asking him about one of 4, how that rolled, and his family dynamics now, and how his mother mothered, and all of these sorts of questions.
So juicy, so interesting.
It was so interesting. And one of the very first things he said to me was, well, I think she intervened too much. She should have just let us fight it out.
Wow.
And I laughed because probably about half an hour before I'd said to you, yeah, but everyone has a right to feel safe.
Yeah.
And here's this man saying, yeah, Mum stepped in too much.
Yeah.
and I was in my head going,
touche.
This is really interesting. I said, oh, that's so interesting. Tell me more about that. And he has a new 4-month-old and then a daughter who's, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something.
Oh, yeah.
So he's very much in the new era. So he wouldn't be in this phase that you're talking about at the moment. And I said to him, so how would you feel about your 2 girls, hashing it out and fighting it out? And he goes, oh, yeah, fine. I mean, at the moment, my older one will kind of walk over the baby or whatever, and we just say to her, you got to be a bit more gentle with her and stuff like that. And I went, oh, okay. What if it was an older brother and he was wailing on his little sister? Oh, no, not at all, ever.
Oh.
And I went, oh, really? That's very interesting. He said, oh, a boy should never, ever, ever in this whole world ever hit a girl, ever.
Wow.
And I went, oh. So it's not the same as when your brothers and siblings wailing on each other. No, that should never happen. Okay. Veered the subject away, but I thought, how interesting.
That is so interesting.
It's so interesting,
because,
isn't it?
I haven't even considered that whole thing.
No, nor did I think that you had.
No.
But I did think it was interesting.
That was immediately his,
Yeah.
delineation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it speaks so largely to culture and what else do I want to say? It just, sometimes I wonder if this is still the uncertainty of the masculine in this culture as well. Is that anything that looks like male ferocity is scary and stamped on. So I had sort of a few things happening in my head, I suppose, around this, but I also really enjoyed the conversation and thought, I've had so many conversations with friends and some of my husband's friends who grew up in, usually it happens in households of boys. I actually haven't, there must be something about the influence of girls growing up in a household, because it certainly does seem to be physically very different in an environment. So the households of purely boys, they are physically fighting all of the time. And I grew up with some of my husband's best friends oh man, we used to take cricket bats to each other. We would break them over each other's backs.
Oh my God.
Full on fighting, right?
Yeah.
Or the only way mum could stop us is by coming out and smacking us with the bat, to tear us apart, this type of thing.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard those stories where it's been a mix of brothers and sisters. So there's something in that dynamic that dilutes it or diverts it.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting. Anyway, so I think that there is a level of law of the jungle for sure. I mean, you and I discuss and I feel are on the same page of there's an air of you need to give them the space to work it out on their own and the tools either side of that to work it out better next time. But not intervening until your help is sought versus you perceiving it needs to be there. Kind of like children playing, can you observe them in their play where they're fully relishing it, or do you need to interrupt it and inject yourself into it? Oh, yes, isn't that a beautiful toy? And bang, they're out of their magic playing land.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar concept. And assuming that our children have strength and not weakness is something I certainly challenge myself to do. But having said that, I have a really big charge on bigger kids beating up littler kids. Not necessarily in size, but certainly in age. When there's different levels of awareness and understanding and there's different capacity, I think that's very different to two 11-year-old boys fighting it out.
Yeah, it's it's much more level playing field. You're almost going to let them go for it.
Yeah, or they both have an awareness and you can talk either side of it when they've come out of that experience with whatever they've come out of that experience with. So with siblings, I do think I guess when I'm thinking about it now, so I obviously have quite a large age gap. So my son's nearly 13 and my daughter's 4. And they certainly are probably the two that tick each other off the most. My eldest daughter, who's only 18 months younger than my son, they'll kind of beat up on each other, but it'll be like, a bump, or they'll punch each other in the arm. And I don't tend to interject with that because it's a pretty level playing field and they have lots of tools. So generally all that's required in those moments is for me to stick my head out and raise an eyebrow. And energetically they both usually stop what they're doing and can, will stop and look at me and, roll their eyes or something and get back to
whatever else.
A more conducive way of communicating.
Yeah.
If it's the 4-year-old, I guess at the moment I listen. So I tune in and listen, but I don't stop it at the moment. So they're not necessarily hitting each other, but they can be very aggressive and violent in their language with each other. So I listen and I wait, and I kind of am looking for the wave, I suppose, the wave that comes up. And is that wave coming back down again to an equilibrium, or is that wave, you know, becoming a monsoon? And if no one's coming off that wave, then it's probably time to step in, because we're now in triggered land and no one is communicating or able to be in their bodies in any type of therapeutic way at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say to you is there's a dance here, and there's a dance with, you know, not needing to rush in and save the situation, because I do think there's breath and room there for you to work with your own triggers and sense of spaciousness by just allowing it. They are safe in the confines of, you know where they are, you have them in earshot or eye shot. They're safe in the sense of you're there. So spend a moment to just parent yourself and feel into the energy that's happening. So when I'm hearing, I generally don't need to look at them, I can hear, and I'm feeling into what is the energy and the tone in my, you know, child number one's voice, and what is the energy and the tone in child number two's voice. And you can usually name and label the emotion they're experiencing in their bodies, but aren't able to work out on their own at that point in time. And sibling dynamics are such that I find this fascinating, because I've made this up, but this is a concept I've been talking about with my eldest daughter recently, called mud throwing. I think I threw this out in one of our blogs or something lately. And it's this idea that, you know, check in with your own body. Where are you feeling? What are you feeling at blah, blah, blah. And sometimes when she's triggered, she can't even. She's like, I don't know. I'm not feeling anything, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay. Well, you know, and we do the mirroring. I'm feeling like this in my body right now, and I'm feeling this knot here, and it feels like a bog here, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm wondering if you're feeling that too. And she only goes, yes, I am. I can feel that. And I go, okay. Well, those feelings you've got in your body there are seeking a way out. And you can choose to acknowledge that those feelings are there, and you can choose to do the thing that they're asking you to do, which is really do something for yourself to help them have an expression and a movement and be cathartic and, you know, wriggled out of your own body. They move you to something. Emotions and feelings are just flags of something's here that I need you to do. Or you can choose to stuff them down a little bit further until they come boiling out like a gas plate or something. And ooh, there is a sibling right there who's going to push that exact button to press that release valve. And guess what? I don't have to be conscious at all with these feelings. I can just take that big bag of mud and I can just hurl it at your face, because you are the perfect person to stimulate that for me so that I can get rid of it. And guess what? It sticks to you now because it doesn't have to stick in me. And she gets that as a concept. And so now it's become in our house, we call it mud throwing.
That's so a great analogy.
When I'm listening to my children, I'm thinking in my head, 1, my own triggers, 2, name and label the emotion that's happening in both of them. What is the need that's currently unmet? And then 3, I'm thinking, well, they're both actually serving a purpose for the other one. So they're both mud throwing, even though neither of them want to own the fact that either of them have feelings to own in the first place.
Yes.
So I'm sitting there going, oh, well, this is kind of perfect, isn't it?
They're both serving each other beautifully.
Yes. And so that's usually what I take out of that situation. So I will enter the room and go, okay, hang on. Stop. Everyone needs to stop right now. And they will stop. And if they don't, I will be stepping in between them. And then I'll be having this mud throwing conversation. So right now, you've got these feelings in your body. What are you going to do with them? Forget what's happening here. What are you doing with those feelings? And we talk about that with each child. And then at some point, once they've had an opportunity to move those through, I will speak to each of them individually about what they were feeling and why they were feeling it. What other tools are. Maybe it's, you know, they're feeling those things because all of this stuff happened during their day. I didn't get to play with so-and-so. I got left out with here, and someone hurt my feelings here. And then my sibling is the perfect mirror of all of those experiences rolled into one. Bang. Again, my sibling is this most beautiful experience of a release.
Of being able to face all those things that I've shoved down the whole day.
Yeah. So we have those conversations continuously, and I don't think they're always going to get it. But 9 times out of 10, they get something out of it. And that stacks until one day they really get it.
Well, I mean, that's building an enormous awareness of emotional literacy and intelligence, essentially, and body connection.
And sometimes it's really just they need some tools. You know, I'm feeling really lonely at the moment. I don't know how to make friends. I don't know what to do when my best friend in the whole world says, I don't like you today. What do I do then? Because I'd put all of my sense of self or safety in this one person. And if they don't like me, what am I going to do? So sometimes it's got absolutely nothing to do with the sibling in the house and everything to do with I can't cope with my life. And this is an excellent way to wail it out without having to be conscious at all. Thank you, sibling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess I'm looking at it that way. I do draw the line with physicality. And look, I'm listening to this builder who came around and I'm thinking, yeah, you know, part of me really gets that. But there's this part of me that also doesn't find it okay. And I'm still honestly reconciling that within me, because I would like to this point where I'm like, yeah, you know, it's all good. But I'm not there yet. I'm still like, everyone has a right to feel safe. And particularly when you're older, bigger, stronger, wiser, more powerful in general in everyday life than this other person, and you are always overpowering them, you don't get to overpower them more. That's not okay. So you have a responsibility with your size and your knowledge and your physical strength that comes with growing up. You know, and I have really big kids too. Like my Lola is 6 months younger than your Hugo, but she'd be twice his size. And I've even had this conversation with we haven't played together because Hugo's been sick, but been at school. But when Hugo likes to play push and shove and he pushes Lola and she pushes back, she's going to flatten him.
Yeah.
And he's not going to think that's a game anymore. And so I have to have this conversation as I can see it happening. Hugo, if you push Lola, she will push you back and you may not like how that goes. You know, it's these conversations because Lola has a responsibility, same as my son, who was always twice the size of all of his friends. He's bigger, he's stronger, he has more muscle, and he has to learn what to do with that.
And learn how to move his body and, you know, learn how his body impacts other people. Yeah.
You know, so I still have all of this kind of perception, I suppose, happening in my work. Like, this is your responsibility to be in your body and in a way own the strength that you come with and take the responsibility of that growth. Because growing up is hard, you know. Having a foot in childhood and a foot in teenagehood is a hard place to be. And I can see as they grow that those conversations and those challenges, you know, we all know this, they all get harder as you get older. But, you know, you're not always going to save your kids from hurting each other. I don't think that that's possible. I think it's fine when they do hurt each other, as long as we're working on both people in that situation. You know, there's never a bully and a victim.
Moving beyond that whole victim or perpetrator dynamic to see, you know, there's much more to it than simply he did this and she did that, and you know, you're the one whose fault it is. And you know, even though we naturally, if we're in a reactive state, are going to go that way, there is always so much more to it than what we see from that perspective.
Totally. And it's just very easy to label one as crazy and one as soft and gentle. But they're both.
Yeah.
And so it's looking for the evidence of where is my beautiful, shy, soft child also courageous, outrageous, fierce, confident,
angry. You know?
Yeah.
all of those bigger emotions.
And where is my super boisterous, you know, out there, crazy, energetic child also really soft and gentle and snuggly and vulnerable, because they're both. So this is also getting you to flip your perceptions on what that is. Maybe it's you with a stronger child, maybe it's you with a weaker child, but this is still plugging you back into your experience as well.
And whatever you're, having an emotional charge around in terms of your kids and their sibling dynamics, it's totally plugging you straight back into your own story. And the reactions you have, like those immediate reactions, are that reptilian area of your brain that's like kind of referring back to like the movie reel that you've got running from that age that you were at. So there's an enormous amount of healing that it's asking of us as parents to go back and replay that, but replay that in a conscious way, because the deeper and more big that emotional charge is, the harder we're being called in to transform that. And our children will magnificently play that out for us and call us into a really deeply authentic place so that we can face ourselves in that. And that's also when it becomes deeply painful, because we're children again. We're almost often like it's our inner child being called to parent our children in those moments, because if we're not online, if we're not in our thinking adult brain, like we're just way back there. And so I think we really need to also be gentle with ourselves, but also willing to lean into those uncomfortable feelings that come up in ourselves, because this whole what we're asking ourselves when we're on this conscious parenting journey to do is to model what regulation looks like. I mean, all of these tools that you're talking about that you equip your children with, this is regulating their nervous system. This is being in their bodies. This is consciously thinking about their impacts on people around them. But they can only do that when they're in, a relatively regulated state in their body.
Totally. Can't do it when you're reactive.
They can't do it when
when
they're completely crazy, jumping around offline, that they're not there, that they can't hear. They can't even, they can't pick up what you're asking of them. And so, we really need to be using regulation in ourselves to move towards those uncomfortable feelings, not away from them, even though in those moments, running away from them is exactly what we want to do. And we do that through checking out, through dissociating, through yelling, through putting on the TV because it's easier. And there's so many things that we as parents can get in the pattern of doing, because facing what can come up for us in terms of the sibling dynamics that we see, it can be too painful to grow through. But yet it's asking us to, by the very nature of that, feeling hard, I think.
What do you mean by regulating ourselves and stepping towards those bigger feelings?
So if you think about, so every single person has a nervous system, and by nature of us having a nervous system, it means we're going to feel things and we're going to feel these senses of emotional charges. And so when we think about a regulated state of nervous system, it means that we're more able to access our prefrontal cortex. We're more able to think logically and consciously, and we really feel embodied in our thinking. Versus dysregulated, when we can be really in that fight, flight or freeze kind of mode. We might slip into sort of dissociated states. We're really jittery. Maybe we're like highly anxious and like we can't sit still, or we've just got like a highly alert kind of state. And so we're going to move in and out of these states all of the time. And we want that. Like there's a bit of an illusion out there that we should have these calm kids, or that we should be calm and peaceful, but that's not possible. Like as long as we've got a nervous system, we're going to be moving in and out of regulation, dysregulation all the time. But there are so many tools that we can equip both of ourselves with and our children with, so that we can learn to do that in a conscious way. And it's getting our left and right brain to talk to each other more often, and that can be through simply just, I often do this when I'm because I get quite triggered with my daughter and her sleeping or her waking up in the middle of the night. So I will be consciously like regulating my own system when I'm with her to keep myself in my body and present and not like triggered, not kind of in that, reptilian brain kind of like reactive mode. because by working to regulate in my own system, I'm being present to the situation I'm in with my daughter, not whatever my story is that I'm bringing to it. Because this is the work of repatterning. And this is repatterning in a moment. And I think that the more that we can do this and recognize when we're feeling highly dysregulated and the patterns for us with our children and what that looks like and how to get back into a more conscious state, that is what they pattern their nervous system on. And the reality is that all of us, if we think about our brains being largely wired by age 3, like 90% wired.
It's crazy when you think about it.
So much of what we're experiencing is implicit memory if we're feeling through our body. So when we have that intense bodily reaction to something that our children are doing, it's because that is a stored, they're pushing in the button of a stored memory for us on how likely our parents reacted to us and therefore the pattern that we got. So if you think that you haven't, if you think you wonder how I understood what anger looked like, well, you got your template for what anger looked like based on how your parents displayed anger to you. Because if you think about us when we're born, we're new in this world and we don't really have a sense of how to be yet. So we're looking to our primary caregivers for, okay, that's what that looks like. So when I'm angry, that's how I use anger. And okay, sad, all right, okay, yeah, I see what sad is. And so we're looking for we're getting our emotional literacy from our parents. And, rightly or wrongly, that's the pattern that we get. And we get a chance to change that pattern, all through life because of neuroplasticity, which is wonderful. But our children will take us back to the implicit memory of what those things look like. And that's our pattern. And so our children, that's why it's going to be so hard to parent, because we are back in ourselves at that same age. And every time we get a chance to face ourselves at that age through our children. And that is why us learning the tools and integrating the tools for how to actively repattern when we're feeling really triggered is not only an enormous gift to ourselves and changing our own story, but it's patterning our child's nervous system, because they're feeling the children's world is a sensory world. It's not a left brain thinking world like we as adults live. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that you read about parenting, which is use these particular words with your child and say, don't say no, or, frame it this way. The words mean nothing because they've got everything from how you're feeling. Like we're
primarily sensory beings. Well, yeah. 90% of our input is coming from our senses.
Before someone even opens their mouth.
Yeah.
So, and our children bathe in that energy.
Yeah.
So I think it's so interesting when we can give ourselves permission to feel more into what those things are that are deeply challenging for us, and then find ways that work for us to repattern them so that we can give our children that emotional literacy that perhaps we didn't have.
Which I dare say, if you're on a conscious journey, perhaps you have a sense that you didn't have everything that you needed or
That's
wanted.
Right. Yeah. I think you're only here if you feel like something's missing, right? If you think you got it all down pat, you're not listening to us.
With that in mind, actually, Bridge, and your incredible body of wisdom that I could certainly listen to and bathe in, we have our 4th round of aligned parenting coming up at the end of September. So if you're really ready to dive deeply and understand more with a greater perspective and toolkit, then our aligned parenting online course could be exactly what you're after. So please check it out on nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs, and you will find aligned parenting. We're really grateful for you for listening. We adore the responses that we get back from whoever is out there that listens and writes to us and says, oh, this happened in my world. And we get to bathe in that sublime feeling and ripples.
It honestly makes our day. I was having the shittiest day the other day, I've got to say. And my husband came back from a weekend at the snow, and he's like, oh, I saw so-and-so, and they said they've been listening to the podcast and they think it's so great, and you're so great. And I'm like, fuck, really? Because I've had the shittest day. So you just made my day.
That's so cute. And you're so great.
I'm thinking, really? Because I really fucked up my morning. So thank you, listeners, for appreciating what we put out in the world. And
yeah, it is really beautiful.
We feel really touched that what we create somehow helps you on your mothering journey.
Yeah, and that you take the time to let us
listen.
know and to listen. Yeah,
And
totally.
to those people who, listen to us in the bath, or your special moments that you get just to yourself. We know how treasured they can be amid the craziness of motherhood. So we feel honoured that we can be in that space with you.
Totally.
That intimate space.
Yeah. We love a bit of intimacy. So you can find out more about us at nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. And we have just started Pinterest.
We have. So
Forgot about that.
Julie's on a bit of a pinning spree. So
It doesn't take much to get me on a pinning spree, I've got to tell you. I'm a little Pinterest
especially when you're in renovation mode, man. That's
I have a board for everything. So we are Nourishing the Mother on Pinterest as well. So please come and follow us, because I'm fairly sure we have no followers at this point in time. And we're just pinning for ourselves.
Yeah, and that's just as joyful.
So remember, you've got to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.